It's real simple philosophy. A restaurant is a manufacturing plant. You got raw materials that come in the back door. Something's done to those materials in the kitchen, and finished product is delivered to the front of the house.
Welcome to Mastering Restaurant Revenue, turning restaurant dreams into significant profits. We're your host, Bruce Russo. He's the GOAT of restaurant design and build, having created nearly 600 money-making operations and earning a tower of national and regional awards in the process. And I'm Diane Armitage, 30 years leading a global marketing agency helping restaurants transform into profit machines. If you run a restaurant, you know margins are so tight and every decision matters. We're showing you how to maximize revenue from actual build-out to time and money-saving equipment, proper concepting and marketing, and the holy grail of them all, the guest experience. No fluff, no guesswork. This is a combined 75 years of proven strategies helping you create bigger revenue streams. Please like, comment, and share this to your industry peers. And let's get to it. So, Bruce, welcome to our #1 episode podcast. Say hi to everybody.
Welcome to the world, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well today.
And welcome to our world, because we've had an interesting year, combined 75 years as restaurant industry improvers. A lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot of years for the two of us.
It's a lot of years. So, Bruce, I want you to say, kind of talk to us a little bit about how you ended up getting into the restaurant industry. When did you actually start designing restaurants?
Okay, I did my first restaurant. It was helping a friend's uncle when I was 17 years old.
17. And you were where? In Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Okay.
So let's go a little bit before that. I'm third generation in the building business.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a job site when I was 8 years old. While all my buddies were playing baseball, I was at work during the summer of school.
Wow.
So I learned the trades pretty early. And at 17, I was a functioning professional. So my buddy at school, his uncle, wanted to build this restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I want to say it was like 1,100 square feet. And, he had the plans drawn on a piece of notebook paper. And it was a hamburger concept.
How many square feet was it?
Like 1,100 square feet.
Uh-huh.
And, as we were there, I always thought, how's he going to make money? I mean, he can only get like 25 seats in here.
Mm-hmm.
But lo and behold, I can tell you that was a positive element because the line was out the building every day.
Wow.
And he ended up building, I think, 10 locations in the Cleveland area.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. It was a huge success.
Now, I know
success.
You stayed in construction and contracting and architecting and all of that thing. When did you really, so you did that for years, but when did you really start getting into the restaurant industry itself? Like, were you in Cleveland at the time or were you in Dallas at the time?
Oh, I was in Dallas. That's when I really started focusing on restaurant.
And why did you choose restaurants?
I come from a huge background of construction project, commercial, residential, development, everything. And what I like about restaurants is whenever it's decided what's going to be built, it moves pretty quick. And that's been the story. I mean, we're usually in and out of a project in 120 to 160, 180 days. So that's start to finish, and it moves pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to achieve that, you have to have a fairly decent plan laid, a game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I have polished and I have honed and I've created a team that is second to none. I mean, I have a 17-man crew and everybody on the job knows how to build a restaurant.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, we'll get into this a little bit more, but it is so specific. Restaurants are so specific, and especially when you are building them to make a profit, because you have a great line. You say, the only number one priority in restaurants is what?
Designed to make money.
Designing to make money. And, a lot of people tuning into this might think that this is more about making money in like the day-to-day operations of the restaurant, like training and management and stuff like that. But in order to master your restaurant revenue, you've got to start way back at the beginning with the foundational understanding, right?
You have to build the machine properly.
You got to build a machine properly. And you can't just hire an architect out there who doesn't understand the intricacies of the restaurant.
No, you have to know how they operate. And I've learned how they operate. I've owned operations. I've created concepts that I've owned and operated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real simple philosophy.
Okay, tell us what it is. I love this.
A restaurant is a manufacturing plant. You got raw materials that come in the back door. Something's done to those materials in the kitchen, and finished product is delivered to the front of the house.
That's it.
I mean, automobiles are made that way. Everything is manufactured that way.
Right.
So that process is hammered in stone. Although now a lot of it's robotic, but the process is still the same. Raw materials in, finished product out.
Exactly. And most restaurants, somewhere in that process, it's built wrong.
Correct.
Yeah. And it limits the revenue that they're able to make.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, does it limit their revenue, or does it cost them more in labor costs and manufacturing because it wasn't done properly?
Absolutely.
So if it wasn't designed properly, do they add 3 steps to their process? And those 3 steps add more labor costs. So, a typical cook line, I design with the theory of restaurants do less revenue Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday than they do Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Correct.
So I design a kitchen that functions with 4 people on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and 8 people Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So when that cook line is putting orders out and they're doing their tickets. If it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're in a 4-foot square. Everybody that works on that line is a 4-foot square.
Mm-hmm.
The prep should be done. All the planning should be there. Everything that is on the menu that they're going to cook at their station should be in a refrigerator drawer or a refrigerator within their 4-foot square.
Right.
And there's no reason for anybody on the cook line to go outside the 4-foot square.
I love it.
And when you develop that kind of system, and it's systematically, everybody in the 4-foot square, they work on their machine, they turn, and you don't want any more than 38 inches. So they take 1 step when they turn, because if they got to take a step and a half, they're wore out in 3 hours.
Yep.
Instead of lasting a 4 or 5 hour shift.
Right.
So all those things have to be considered. And, you take a common person, they look at a 38 inch aisleway between equipment. It's like, how do you work in a place like this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think it should be? 6 feet? Well, it doesn't work.
Well, and what I love about what you talk about with the 4x4 square, because I've seen this in action in your kitchens. Then when you get to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it expands.
Yes.
Not the 38 inches, but the space, the workers expand. So talk a little bit about this too.
Okay. So, I'll tell you the biggest pushback in restaurant design, restaurant building is the capital expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about the capital expenditure. Let's do it cheap, cheap, cheap. Well, it costs X amount of dollars to build a machine. And if you build a cheap machine, guess what? You get cheap results.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a proven fact. So, when you build the machine, the expo line has to be a certain way, and everything has to work. And, when the switch is turned on in the morning, when they start prep all the way through, they shut the lights off at night. I mean, how they prep the food and where they prep the food, and all the way down to closing, and how easy is it to clean the floor? I don't use tile floors. I use a recycled product that's 1/4-inch rubber that is welded together, and the floor rolls up the wall 6 inches to where there's no seam at the wall that creates wall rot that deteriorates the walls in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
It's a common problem.
Right.
So you could actually plug the drains and fill it like a bathtub. It'll hold the water.
Well, and these are just minor keys that most architects don't understand because they're not designing and they're not operating in a kitchen space and understanding how that commercial kitchen is operating all day long,
Correct,
every day of the year.
And here's the key thing when designing a restaurant. The more things that you can design and develop by default, operate by default, the better off you are. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you open the back door, there should be a closer that closes the back door by itself. When you open the back door, there should be a fan that blows to keep the bugs out. All that's by default. Nobody has to turn the switch on. When you open the door, that happens. It closes by itself. Over the past 10 years, we've developed an exhaust system that has sensors in it because the first thing that gets turned on in the kitchen is the exhaust hood.
Right.
Well, these sensors sense heat. And if there's no heat, the fans run at like 200 RPMs. When the heat starts, the sensor picks it up. As the hotter it gets, the more RPMs the fan turns. It's all automatic.
Makes sense.
All by default.
Well, and go ahead.
So what does that do? Well, it saves a ton of money on air conditioning and energy bills.
And wear and tear. Machine.
A lot of cities like to see exhaust on the dish hoods. I'm a big advocate to not put exhaust on the dish hood because in engineering a restaurant, there's makeup air. If you're sucking air out, you have to replace it somehow. Well, on the dish hood, there's no code in any city, anywhere that says anything about replacing the air that goes up the hood. So you're basically sucking heated or cooled energy-driven air.
Right.
I eliminate the fan, create a hood over the dishwasher, but it captures the moisture, drains down the sides, and drains onto the table of the dish table, and then into the drain on the floor.
That's fabulous.
And that probably saves, a dish hood probably sucks 3 to 4 tons of AC out of the restaurant. Yeah.
An hour.
So, it's the efficiencies. You got to build a smart, efficient machine.
Well, and
so when I say it starts with the design, those are the things that I'm talking about.
And it's not just in the kitchen, and it's not just the design. We've talked about in the past, and we'll be talking about this in the podcast, negotiations with the landlord in tenant finish, dealing with the cities and the zoning, planning, design review demands, right? And then the avoidable foibles of trying to shoehorn into a second generation space. There are all kinds. And then we're talking about front of house, everything that happens in the front of house, the traffic patterns that are developed between the kitchen and the private dining rooms, the kitchen and the bar, all that sort of thing. Now, we've talked about all of this in other shows that we've done, but now we're going to do it in more of a systematic methodology so that people really begin to understand this. Now, the one thing that I really love about what you do that you don't hear many people talk about, and this shoehorns with what I do on the branding and the marketing concept and all that kind of thing, is going in from the beginning with a plan for pods of revenue. And that is your phrase, pods of revenue.
Correct.
And this is the key.
Correct.
Before you even start the design, what do you want to have as your pods of revenue and how many can you have? Now, most restaurant owners, what I've seen in restaurants, two pods of revenue maybe, if they even recognize and are conscious of that. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is to talk about what the different pods of revenue are, just kind of offhand, because I think there's up to as many as 10, right?
You can get as many as 10 based on the concept and the menu. But by design, in a restaurant design that has a ticket average above $60, The very first thing you're going to see to the right when you walk in is tables for cocktails. The hostess has to be trained to take the couples to the cocktail tables. We want them to buy an app, and we want them to buy a cocktail by design. Why? Because those two items are the most profitable items on a restaurant menu. And so when you design for that to happen, the first thing, now here's the trick. You cash them out at those cocktail tables.
Correct.
You don't put those, do not, from an operation standpoint of view, I'm going to tell you, don't put those cocktails and those apps on the dinner ticket.
Agreed.
Because when they get the final ticket, they're going to, wow, we spent $300 on dinner.
Mm-hmm.
When you split them up, nobody goes home and adds them together.
Correct.
I mean, I think there's certain professionals out there that are in our finance business that might add the ticket. Joe, add the tickets again. So, but
so you're talking about the bar as one pot of revenue.
But the bar is a separate pot that's a different pot of revenue. The 4 to 6 cocktail tables for the apps, that's one pot of revenue.
I got you.
Bar is because those we want those to turn. We don't want we want them 10 minutes. We want quick apps like,
shishito peppers.
Yes. Shishito peppers or, edamame or falafel or, and those are all low food costs, but high profit margin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you get that with a cocktail. I mean, those two items, it's 40% profit.
Right.
Okay. And it took the wait staff 3 minutes to do it.
Correct.
You took your labor force in the kitchen 3 minutes to prepare it.
Mm-hmm.
And your food cost is next to nothing. So that operates because you want those tables to turn every 10, 15 minutes. Now, we don't want the bar to turn every 15 minutes. I mean, it's great, but we prefer people to relax in the bar and have 1 or 2 cocktails and then prep themselves and then go have dinner. That's a whole different pot of revenue because those seats at the bar proper you have to pay attention to them, and that's the bartender's job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You drop the apps off and a cocktail table, there's nothing else to do but go get them when their table's ready.
Correct.
Okay, but by design and by operation training, that hostess is trained to watch those cocktail tables. When they walked in, there was no tables, and there could have been 8 tables available.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know what reservations are what.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a cocktail and a half. By the time you get done, your table will be ready. It's like magic. It's like
right.
Peter Pan clicking her heels. And then you got the dining experience. So the dining experience is pod 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wait staff. It's everybody involved in the restaurant. It's the cocktails. And then number 4, it's wine sales.
Correct. Wine program.
Wine program. Number 5 is private dining room.
Correct.
Some kind of private dining room, if you have a private dining room. Over the past 5 or 6 years, we're seeing the private dining room thing go away.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the new demographic, they fill the restaurant.
And it does kind of depend on what the concept of the restaurant is and whether it's more conducive to group dining, so to speak,
Correct.
Or PDRs, private dining rooms. So, but that is definitely a pot of revenue to consider when putting the design in place, whether you have a PDR separate room or whether you have something that that you can close off from the main restaurant space.
And see, that's what I design now. They're probably 20, 30 seat PDRs.
Mm-hmm.
But, I use glass pocket doors. And so when you seat it with regular diners, they don't feel like they're in the back room.
Correct. They sit up in the back corner.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I let the design flow into the PDR, and the only way it becomes a PDR is when the doors come out of the wall.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like that too as a selling concept for other groups, because you see those people through the glass having a great time. You're like, oh, look at that. There's a private dining room. So I like that.
There's benefits to private dining. I mean, it's price per plate, and, it's 40 or 50 people at a time, and it's guaranteed sales, and, it's typically paid for before they get there a week before. So the cash flow is there for the operator. But what happens in the back of the house? When those 50 tickets come up, I can tell you, doesn't matter what restaurant you're in, that the other portion of the front of the house suffers in some way.
Right.
Time-wise.
But I know that you have found solutions as close as possible that we're going to be getting into as we do this whole podcast series, because there are ways to begin to handle that more effectively and efficiently, for sure.
Yes. And I've designed them to where they work. Yeah.
So I also want to talk about patios. Now, patios can also be a pot of revenue.
Huge.
Yeah. And can be an entirely different menu as well. I mean, the bar can be a different menu. The patio can be a different menu, whatever.
Correct.
In many cases, you want to design a patio or a rooftop space with a different menu because of just the amount of time it takes to get the food there and how well it survives the trip, so to speak.
And the logistics of getting it served.
Right, exactly. So patio can be a very solid pot of revenue.
And, we've done many of them that are climate control.
Yes, exactly. So they can be year-round?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Drop down vinyl curtains. It's probably one of the most best invention ever happened to the restaurant business. You close it off, and there's special HVAC systems that we use for patios that are just for the patios. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the propane heater kind of thing.
No, neither.
But, there's a time and place for those. If it's a patio umbrella, those work.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a covered patio, I'm not really a big fan of those.
Well, in a lot of cases, you can run into all kinds of code enforcement issues there, too, because you don't want those heaters under a covered patio. So,
it contaminates. Yeah, it contaminates the air, too.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So other pods of revenue. Can you think of anything else?
To-go program based on the ticket average.
Say that.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, that could be a separate menu too.
Mm-hmm.
To-go program. A lot of my clients during COVID, their sales were 120% of their regular sales.
We experienced
because they were smart enough to plan for a to-go program.
Mm-hmm.
They shut their dining rooms and they focused strictly on a to-go program. And I can tell you, some of the operators that I've designed and built restaurants for were pretty successful.
In Laguna Beach, of course, my background in Laguna Beach here for 25 years. 23 of those 25 years, I've been covering all of the restaurants in Laguna Beach and not marketing them as a paid person, but marketing them to the public to keep them alive, because we have such a high seasonal throwback,
Right.
And I remember when we hit COVID, the fastest, most effective restaurant to come to the top had a sous vide program in their kitchen. And so they began doing everything sous vide, which was amazing. You could order full on, beef Wellington. You could order all these beautiful dishes. And it was absolutely amazing how quickly their income tripled from what they had been doing before. So, and it's not just that, but when you look at the to-go, the design that you have to put in place for the online ordering and the delivery guys showing up randomly in the middle of the heat of service, looking for their Uber Eat bag. What can you do to design around that? And how can you create a more effective, efficient system that allows you to have that going on even in the heat of service? Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's funny you say that.
Yes.
Because right after COVID, every restaurant that had a $30 to $50 check average, I designed it with a separate door for Uber pickup, separate parking spaces for Uber to where they never entered the dining room.
Oh, that is just.
And so, I mean, some of the operators had it set up to where they just had metro shelving, that was lettered A to B, C to D, and if it was the Smiths, they just look on the shelf and grab it and go.
Right.
And it was. Some of them are really successful at it.
Well, if you think about it, when you have a host or hostess, even, at the front, and the delivery guys come in the front, they are taken off post so that they have to go try to find the order.
And so what I've done is after COVID, the ones that I've designed, they had their own person that managed those Uber orders.
Yeah.
Through their own separate door with their own separate parking lot. Because let's face it, I don't ever recall seeing an Uber driver or anybody picking up to-go orders in a tug.
Yep.
So, some of them were, I've seen some pretty rough ones.
Yeah.
And it really upsets the dining room.
Yes. Because
you got that flow of traffic. But everybody's kind of like, what is this guy? What is this lady doing? What is it?
And they're hanging out at the host stand and they're leaning around
because the order's not ready and they're standing outside the door. It's. So I fixed it. I mean, we fixed it by design and there's a burger concept that I've probably done 12 restaurants for, and that they still have that side door for Uber pickups.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it is just so smart. And, as we do more of these episodes, of course, we're going to be talking about shoehorning into, second generation restaurants, what to do with what you get and that kind of thing. So there's a lot that we're going to be covering here. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of wondering, how did these two people get together? He's in Dallas, she's in Laguna Beach. So I wanted to talk briefly about how we first met. As I was saying, I cover all the restaurants in Laguna Beach, especially new announcements of incoming restaurants and all that kind of thing. And we had a retail place that was being turned into a restaurant in our downtown corridor. And when I went there to talk to somebody who was in charge, you were at the front door, sitting there on a chair, overseeing everything, getting up, walking over here, sitting down on the chair again. You were the guy in charge. Your family that was building the restaurant here, they're based in Dallas, and they sent you up to oversee the whole project.
Right.
Yes. And you weren't just overseeing the build. You were we had a lot of historical going on, which we'll talk about in another episode. All of the work that you had to do to meet historical requirements. You were with the planning division. You were getting permitting. You were getting the license for the liquor. Everything was going on in your world. And you thought you were only going to be here a few weeks, and you were here how long?
About 8 months.
Yeah, at least 8 months. I think it was maybe more than that.
And so that's a good description of my role. You say architect, you say contract, you say, we're really the development partner. That's what we are to our client. That's what I like the definition to be. We're the client's development partner because we do this every day. I would never send a client to the city to pull a permit or, it's just, they don't do it every day. We do it every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember you telling me a story. His name was Stuart, I think, and he had developed restaurants with other architects before.
Yes.
And when he started working with you, can you kind of relay that story? Because I thought it was just so great.
Well, he at one point he was probably, if not one of the largest nightclub owner in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's told me the story, like he's seen like the first one was fine. The second one, he said after the second one, there was always a disaster. He said that it seemed like they always turned into a disaster. He said, for some reason, I got the feeling that wasn't you. He said, and I bet the firm. He said, and I'm going to tell you. after what I just went through on one, and it wasn't in your local town. It wasn't with local guys that you work with, but the result that you've driven and you've delivered to me, second to none. There's no reason for me, and I have no reason to ever use anybody else. You will design and build every restaurant I do until the day they put dirt on.
Now, was this the guy who was actually looking at initial plans and he was kind of like, okay, we've been through a few weeks with you. Where's the headache? When's it going to start?
Exactly. No, yeah. He called.
When does the pain start?
Yeah. No, we were about 3 weeks into the project, and he called me. How's everything? I said, everything's going great. He goes, well, that's just talk. He said, pull the curtain back. And
give me the scoop.
Give me the scoop. When does the headache start? I said, Stuart, we don't have any headaches. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the only headache I got is the dumpster wasn't picked up like it was supposed to this morning, but that's not the reason for me to call you to tell you that I got a headache. He just chuckled. And then I did another one for him, and he never came. He never came to the project while we were building it.
Wow.
I mean,
now that says something.
He's seen progress photos, but he never came to the restaurant until it was 100% done, and they did their pre-opening.
Wow.
And when he came, he invited me and my wife to have dinner with him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of ironic how it all played out, because they got there about 2 minutes before we did. And he walked in, and Mary and I walked in right behind him, and he had tears running down his cheek.
Oh.
So this most beautiful restaurant I've ever seen. I mean, and he's still the same guy to this day.
Wow, that is just awesome. Well, and the other thing that I love about what you do, and I'm we both are very, very committed to our restaurant operators, obviously. And
yes.
I think both of our companies go over and above. But I love the story that you tell of, I won't give his name away because I want you to tell his name later, but when he began, he had trouble. And when he started a new restaurant, he started it with you, and then he didn't have the funds to pay you. Yeah. So can you tell that quick story, and then we'll close for our first episode?
Well, there was a concept. I mean, do you want me to name the concept?
Sure.
Chili's.
Oh, okay.
That was the concept. And that was originally started in Dallas.
Okay.
And the gentleman bought the concept from the gentleman that started it.
Okay.
And he started to roll it out. Well, it was a little tougher to roll out than he thought. He had some trouble. He had to take a couple steps back. Moving forward, he was a little radioactive, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a developer that took him under his wing and gave him 2 locations and put the deal together to where it was a build-to-suit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For the owner of Chili's. And I built them. And part of the deal was he had to pay his portion at the end. And the developer picked up majority of the other costs. So when we finished the 2, he came to me, he said, Bruce, I don't want to be a bad guy, but I don't have the money to pay you. Mm-hmm. He said, if you just give me 90 days to let me cash flow a little bit, he said, I'll pay you 110% of what I have you. He said, but, as a gentleman, you have to trust me. Don't lien the properties. Don't cause any. I said, you're being straightforward with me. So I'll give you 90 days. He paid me on an 89th day, the whole 110%, plus a little more. And for the next 18 years, for the next 25 years, every time he seen me, if Mary and I were out to dinner or if I was walking up the sidewalk, he would go out of his way to come shake my hand and thank me, to the point where there were times where, Mary and I were at dinner and he'd be in the restaurant. And I got to tell you, the guy had a polo accident and he could barely walk. He was probably 80% crippled.
Mm-hmm.
And he would walk across the entire restaurant to come shake my hand.
Wow.
With tears in his eyes.
And his name was?
Norm Brink.
Norm Brinker.
They did $4 billion in revenue. Those two restaurants were I think they're number 4 and 5 for him. And I can't even begin to tell you how many they have now, but it's quite a few. It's worldwide.
Well, and this is the thing. It's so fulfilling for both of us to be working with restaurant owners and chefs, because there's a passion there that is almost insanity. It's a commitment and a passion, and they won't stop and they don't quit. They keep coming back at it and they keep wanting to make it better.
And see, but that goes for all of us, you and I both.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all have that same passion. And, I don't know what the recipe is, but there's a recipe that equals success somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
And you've witnessed it with chefs. I've witnessed it with chefs. When they have the passion, the concepts thrive.
Right. Right. And when they have the support system behind them, including the design of the concept and including the proper management and training. It's not just a one-man shop in there. A chef cannot carry a restaurant with a menu.
No.
And that's what we're here to do. This is what this whole podcast is about, is teaching people how to help them not only survive, but actually thrive. And every single time we do an episode, we're going to teach new ways of shifting from a survival mode to a thrive mode. And I think it's also going to help patrons who, to help them gain more of an empathetic understanding of the complications and the intricacies of owning and operating a restaurant.
Absolutely. As you know, I had a TV show. We did 40 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Build it with Bruce.
Yes. And when I was doing those shows, the theory and my whole goal, we would go start to finish, and we would do 4 episodes for every concept that we designed and built.
Mm-hmm.
So the patrons could actually see what it took to get from dirt on the floor to having dinner on the plate. And they were amazed. We had a lot of followers, and it was, it was pretty cut and dry, and it was, I was very explained to everything as it was going together. And, we'd have the chef on the show, and, the big key here is chefs are chefs. They know how to cook in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you can't you have to avoid designing obstacles in their way. They don't know what the obstacles are because they're chefs.
Right.
And the only thing that they know is the last kitchen they worked in, or the kitchen before that, or what that was like, or what, they're chefs. They're masters at cooking. They're not masters at designing. So when there's obstacles in the way, they can't put their finger on what the obstacle is.
Correct.
Like one simple thing. And, I've had many conversations about this. When I design a restaurant, there's one way in for the dirty dishes, and there's one way out for the food to come out. That doesn't happen in the same door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all function because the wait staff, their time is valuable.
Right.
So you have to create a process. You have to show them the way. So they drop off the dirty dish, make a turn, go to the host stand, POS right there, or put their order in. Right next to that is the water. They get the water or their sodas or their iced tea and go out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then come back around and they pick up the orders from the expo line and go out the same door again. It works. Trust me. It's traffic control.
It is traffic control, but it has so much to do with where you put the doors. And
exactly.
It's all about that. So these are the things that we're going to be discussing over this entire series. So next week, I would love to talk about addressing the primary restaurant concepts out there, namely so that the patrons understand what we're talking about when we're talking about fast casual versus counter versus dining, all that kind of thing. And talk about, the best square footage for revenue per each concept as well. And I also want to talk about something I think that will be kind of interesting is where you put your front door. It can kill your place.
A major key.
It is a major key where you put your front door. So that's one of the things that we're going to be addressing in the next episode. And I am really looking forward to what we have ahead for all of us here. I think it's going to be a fantastic concept and a fantastic show.
I do too.
All right, my friend. Well, I will let you go. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. And we will check in with you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Have a good day.
Thank you for joining Bruce and Diane on this journey of mastering restaurant revenue. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps them deliver even more of what you want to hear. Until next time, keep refining your approach, stay passionate about your craft, and here's to your restaurant's continued success.